No.
Good afternoon, folks. We have a guest with us this evening.
Hello?
Hello. That's not his name.
The guest. The guest is so mysterious. I love that.
His name is Shelby.
True story.
Shelby.
Guilty as charged.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Ivan Files.
Yeah.
This is where we come to play.
Yeah.
Talk about the great expanse that is life.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to ask you a question. This is a question
Okay.
that may occur to people, or it may not. And it has to do with religion a little bit, but it has to do with the translation of some of the writings and so on. I ran across a person who wrote a book, or I ran across the book, who described the person. Well, something like that, yeah. Anyway, the question I have is, what if, and these are what if questions, which are good questions, I thought, and it's, what if, I don't know what your religion is, and I don't have to know. But suppose that I told you that I ran across something that said that God had a committee.
Okay.
What would you think? Now, most from the time we're little kids in the Christian era of it's the three, right? The Father, Son, the Holy Ghost. And that's what we're brought up with. Well, suppose that somebody said, well, we found out that there was the Father and about eight counselors that he relied on to help him with all of this. And so what would you think about that?
I mean, I think that'd be pretty interesting, especially if that was like somewhere in Scripture. Because, we've always known that victors write history, right? So if there were 8 and 3 of them became dominant in some sort of struggle, and now only 3 remain, that would make sense in my mind.
Right.
I would also feel a little bit better if maybe it was a little bit more committee-based than one person. But that really comes down to personal opinion, right? I mean, I'm not a big dictator guy, not a big fan of like, this is how it will be.
Yeah.
Because I don't know of any one person that is a all-knowing being. In the Scripture, obviously, you do have an all-knowing being.
Yeah.
So why would you need multiples if you have an all-knowing?
Well, the universe is a pretty big place. And if you think about, well, like Genesis, for instance, to create all of that and so on, and to find out that he really did have a committee to help him with that. And another author talks about I forgot what I was going to say, but can you help me with that?
So essentially like a committee being a part of. So are you talking about like outside influence of multiple people in this scenario? I mean, I think it's an interesting concept, and it wouldn't surprise me if it were true. I think that one thing that's been really interesting with the rise of like the government being like, hey, guess what? There might be aliens out there, is that it really causes you to put a little bit more weight into the ancient alien theory, right? The fact that we know so little as a species. Being looking at the calendar and seeing that it's 2023, and that's only 2,000 years in a very long time frame, it's really hard to take anything on somebody else's word.
Yeah.
Like, we see how stories are passed down generationally, and even how manipulated media is today, and it's hard to truly like lean on anybody for knowledge at this point. So I think there's a very high chance that we are going to see a lot of loss of faith in the coming years, and it's going to be a very interesting time.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And that's a good point. A loss of faith. And why would there be a loss of faith?
I mean, I think that faith was all based on the fact that, like, you are looking for a reason, right? And the thing that the Bible is so good at is really, like, diving deep into a person's soul and having them seek their own answers without the Bible really pointing out directly what the answer is. So it tackles philosophical issues that allow the human being to feel more safe because they have some sort of answer. When you throw out the fact that, like, okay, this wasn't created by a one all-knowing being, it may cause people to question their faith a little bit more, I believe. But I still think there's going to be a big proponent of people that follow the Bible and they live better lives because of it, and they don't really care where it came from.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's okay.
There's also problems with people that have a certain belief or a faith, but they want everybody else to have the same thing.
Yeah.
And so a lot of folks are just keep it to themselves, or they go to church once in a while, or a synagogue, or whatever, you know. The Buddhist, well,
Yeah.
the Buddhists don't have a god. They just have, you know, if you see Buddha coming, shoot him. Anyway, let me look here, but that was kind of getting at it, and
Buddha's always been super interesting to me as well, because the philosophical, like, sayings and teachings of, like, Confucius and that whole line of religion is really, really interesting and really resonates with me. You know, some of the stuff that comes out of those books are things that I, like, think about on the daily, right?
Yeah.
Like, every man lives two lives. One starts when they're born, and the second begins when they realize that they're going to die one day. And, like, those big sayings that come out of that book that are just like one or two sentences that have such heavy impact have always been very intriguing to me.
what book?
Is that Confucius? Buddha? What is the Buddhist religion based off of?
Buddha.
It is Buddha?
Yeah.
Buddhism.
What
Buddhism.
his teachings are, and so on.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And
So
that's
is that a book? Like, do you call that?
Is that the Bhagavad Gita?
No. The Bhagavad Gita really translates to the Song of God, and it's Sri Krishna talking with Arjuna at a battle point. Arjuna is the warrior that has to fight off his relatives. There's a bunch of relatives in there. And he's very sad about it, and he just doesn't want to do it at all because it's, you know, he's talking to Krishna and he says, how can you say, you know, like you're a fellow man and we got to go do this? So the Bhagavad Gita is about Krishna, Sri Krishna, which is the sense of representative of God in the Hindu faith, and Hindus, you know, they believe in Vishnu and Shiva and Brahma. Brahma's the big guy.
Gotcha.
But they have the whole India has a time when they have a big celebration for because of Vishnu, that sort of thing. anyway.
Now, do you think like there's any possibility that all of these religions stemmed from the same like happening back in the day? Like if there was actually extraterrestrial or interference of some kind, is there any way that all of these religions sparked off of the same entities?
What would you think if somebody came in a flying saucer and said, "Hi, folks. Well, it's time. It's time for you to understand how you all got here a long time ago, and I'm going to tell you about that because it wasn't all this stuff that's been written. We're the ones that did that, and we're from some planet out there somewhere." And
Right.
so, what would you think about that?
I mean, I think nothing is off the table. You know what I mean? I think there's definitely possibility to it. I think the tough part about this conversation is it ultimately comes down to like faith and whether you are a man of religion or a man of like ancient astronaut theory or a man of Hindu. At the end of the day, you always get to a place where it's like, well, I believe in this because I believe in this. Like this is what I choose to believe and put faith into. Mm-hmm. And I think wars have been fought over that type of mentality. So it's kind of hard to answer that question. Like I think anything is possible. I think it's interesting to like have that conversation and think, okay, what if this was actually a possibility?
Yeah.
In terms of us knowing what really happened, like we're never gonna know. We're never gonna know unless time travel is real, and we're able to travel in time. It could happen.
Well, suppose you have the facility to do that already.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't know it, or
Okay.
you don't know how to use it. So that would be interesting.
That
wouldn't
would be. I'd be very interested in
it?
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing about the question of in relationship to the Christian Bible or the Jewish Torah or that whole thing in Israelites, is that most of that is written for them. And here comes Jesus along, and the information is that he really said what he said in the four Gospels. It was directed to the Israelites who weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing according to the Old Testament and what had been developed. So that was what he did. So that kind of makes it interesting. But the initial question is like, if God has he's a entity, an entity. That's about the best we can say.
Right.
And that he created these counselors, if you will, to help him out with all of this. And this other author talked about the counselors being being helpful with it, and he's helping them do what he wants. See,
Right.
and that would be the whole story of that part of it, and the rest of it. Your question about will it all boil down to one thing? Don't know.
Yeah.
Don't know. What do you think?
I'm so intrigued right now because we're in such a weird place in society in general where there's going to be a lot of stuff that happens in the next 15 years that might give us answers or might give us more questions.
15, did you say?
15, I think.
okay.
Yeah, I think 10 to 15, maybe even less.
Yeah.
I mean, the way that artificial intelligence is rapidly evolving,
Right.
like we're kind of at a point where anything can be fabricated or will be able to be fabricated in the very near future. right?
Those 3D printers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
3D printers, but like say they use muscle, right?
Yeah.
So say now you have a software that can basically answer questions, and then you give it a voice, and now you have a 3D printing machine that can print matter. Like,
Yeah.
what is stopping us from printing a being with an organic printer that has software that we've injected to it that becomes intelligence, right? Then you're at a point where you're creating life.
Yeah.
Okay? I kind of got a little bit on a tangent there, but like to your initial question of like, what do I think of all of these happenings? I think that the UFO conversation is continually going to happen here in the near future because everybody has a phone in their pocket that can snap picture or take video.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that's going to be very interesting in the next couple of years is as the artificial intelligence gets better and better, those computers are going to be able to fabricate video and picture, and we as humans are no longer going to be able to say, oh yeah, look what happened to me, here's a picture of it. Right now, that is a way that we validate what's happening, and that will no longer be a validatable process for
Right.
us.
Yeah.
And I think when that happens, we're in a very interesting situation because it really breaks the fabric of how we communicate and articulate data to one another right now. So it's gonna be really interesting because like there's gonna be something that happens with aliens. It feels like society is like getting to a point where it's not as taboo. People are talking about it more and more. And then when
yeah.
you see a UFO over the White House, do you know it's real?
Yeah.
Is it real? And I think that puts us as a society in a very uncomfortable situation. You know, there's something to be said about being able to go home and watch the 6 o'clock news and know that we're all getting the same information at 6 p.m. and 10 o'clock or whenever the news is on. Nowadays, you can go into a rabbit hole on the internet and not even be completely oblivious to a submarine imploding up north that nobody articulated to you.
Yeah.
So it's just like a really weird time in society, and I don't know which way it's going to go. It wouldn't surprise me if people start to unplug a little bit more and kind of go back to community-based living. Like the farmers markets, the exchanges of goods and services in your community. Like I think we might go back to that. And I think it's because you see these big companies like Amazon that are taking over the world, and then you buy something and you're like, oh, this is a chintzy piece of garbage from the other side of the world. Yeah, I saved $10, but I would have rather had John down the street make me one.
There's one that works.
Yeah, right. Like the watch. Didn't you buy a watch and it like immediately
Yeah.
stopped working like the next
Yeah.
week, or the band broke or something like that? Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I should say that most of Amazon stuff I'm familiar with does work. So,
Yeah.
you know, I want to say that.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
we
we
go
use it
out.
all the time. Like they come to
Yeah.
our house at least 5 times a day. It feels like,
Yeah.
and most of the time we don't even need it, but it still shows up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
The Buddhist book is Brahmaputra. Putra.
Brahmaputra.
Yeah, Putra. Yeah.
Huh.
I have a copy of it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Oh, there was another thing that is kind of integral to the idea that we don't know all there is to know about physics, for one thing.
Mm-hmm.
But there's the idea that since we're taught that space is empty, it's a vacuum,
Mm-hmm.
well, it isn't, and it's ether, and sometimes that's spelled A-E-T-H-E-R, and sometimes E-T-H-E-R. But it's one author calls it a spatial fluid that flying saucers fly in. But it's a whole different set of, it's a united system of physics, which is a different system of physics than the one we're going on right now, we think. I
Right.
don't know what those guys in Area 51 are doing, or 52, or whatever it is, you know.
You gotta imagine there's more there.
Oh, yeah.
Have to.
Yeah.
I mean, some brilliant minds are working on those projects.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But the thing about the shock to people is if you find out that God is not just the Trinity and all of that, what are they going to do with that? What will the pastors do with that? What will the students do with that? What will we all do with that? You know?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that they find a way that all can be true, right? Like, so who was the scientist that was thrown in jail for basically saying that the sun was the middle of the earth, not the earth? Was that who was that?
Copernicus.
Aristotle? No, Copernicus. Copernicus, is that
I
it?
think so, yeah.
Captain America?
Not Captain America. Definitely not Captain America. But like my point is like they basically put this guy in a cell because he said the earth is not the center of the earth. And that went against the religion of that day.
Right.
And the reason he was cast out is because it was so counterintuitive to what religion was speaking.
Yeah.
Well, since then, more data has come out to show, nope, the sun actually is the center of the earth, and religion has found a way to coexist.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that there's going to have to be a time where somebody can be religious, but also accept that there's a greater power out there that may be similar or higher, or in some way religion will continue to see its way through. And there's a lot of benefit to religion, right? I mean, it gives us reason, it gives us purpose, it gives us community. It truly does allow many individuals to live a full life. And those benefits exist whether there is one true God or there is not one true God. Right? Like, those benefits of religion still exist either way.
Okay.
So there's not necessarily like, oh, God was an alien, religion's gone. Like, I don't think that's ever going to happen. There's too much benefit within religion and a commonality that will continue to stay, and I think it'll truly evolve as more data comes out.
Yeah, and they have to, like schools and universities and even churches have to look at what they're teaching.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting place to look too, because you look at like education and society for years and years, and so much of it has been memorization and regurgitation, or understanding idea and conceptually working with it or around it to create something new. In this day and age where we have all the information at our fingertips, it's really going to uproot the paradigm of education in general. I have a friend, I was telling Kelly about this earlier, that I went to a bachelor party with recently. And I hadn't seen him for 15 years, and I love this guy to death, but when we were in school together 15 years ago, I would not have described him as the smartest guy in the room, right? I wouldn't have. And when he got done with school, he realized, what I majored in really wasn't my thing, so I'm going to go learn something else. And he took it upon himself to teach himself this skill through internet-based classes, through textbooks, through these other avenues that aren't the traditional university.
Uh-huh.
And now he's working for one of the biggest tech companies in Seattle and making a really good living. I think he's doing better than anybody else at the bachelor party, which I'm happy for. But what I'm getting at is like that traditional path of higher education is going to be challenged. And it's going to force us as a society to take a hard look at how we're training the next generation, right? Is it right to take a 10-year-old and say, hey, memorize these multiplication facts when you're going to have a calculator on your person for the rest of your days? And I don't know what the answer is, but I'm going to ask the question.
Well, I think the answer about memorization and how to operate plus, minus, times, divide, all of that stuff, all the way up through calculus is a valuable thing for them to do, and I think it's good for your brain.
I would agree.
Yeah, so if we just put everything aside and just use calculators, it's, well, a lot of multiplication and so on, it's, I have it in my head faster than the calculator could do it.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people do that, too.
Right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I don't see throwing calculators away, but I
Right.
see them.
So is it the problem solving that we need to double down on? Like problem solving in general?
Critical thinking,
Critical thinking.
yeah, and that's problem solving too.
Yeah.
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 And you need to learn things like logic.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, geometry is a good, even though it's math,
Mhm.
it's a good teacher for logic.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, let's see, we have anything else here that we want to talk about today? Oh, and the other thing is, suppose somebody told you that Eden was not on the earth, it was somewhere else. Or do you care?
Interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, I haven't gone far enough into this author's work
Huh.
to.
Eden not on Earth. What does that mean? Does that mean that was it like a different planet? Is that what you're implying?
No, that you're here,
Okay.
but you're also there. That is to say that part of you
Okay.
is in what etheric way? It's not physical. Part of you is not physical,
Gotcha.
but it is still part of you.
Mhm.
And so you learn that way, but you also, there's also much, our culture is too damn heavy in everything has to be mechanical. Everything has to be physical, that way. And that's not true. It's
Yeah.
there's the whole other side, and that part can be responsible for a lot of stuff.
Hmm.
A lot of a lot of what we're all about, I think.
Yeah.
They're trying to really set it up two ways. One is we're all physical. Our brains are nothing more than a pile of stuff that's a bunch of blood is flowing through, and from the time you're an infant up, or actually before, it accumulates all this data, if you will, and how to operate physicalness of the world. But there's this other part too. I want to talk more about that later on too.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm here for it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's quite the question, and I think it's something we can dive into.
Uh-huh.
What is that state that we bring to the table that's not physical or mechanical? I think there's something to be said about that, and I think we're gonna have to really that is gonna become a more popular topic of conversation, and I think you're already seeing that in terms of like meditation and stuff of that nature, kind of on the rise right now in our society, and I think it's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
Good work.
I just
Good day today.
read a little bit about in a book about the relaxation response, where the author says that we owe a debt to Mahesh Yogi. Do you remember him?
Nope.
Huh? You don't?
No.
Oh God, I'm not that old.
Is he?
Maybe that's another
Is that
episode.
my high school teacher? Oh yeah, elementary school. Maharashtra Kashipatusha. No, I don't know that.
Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. What he did, he came to this country after he's got some education in physics and all that stuff too.
Uh-huh.
He came to this country and got people to meditate. And the guy that wrote Relaxation Response said we owe him a bit of gratitude because we weren't paying any attention to that, you know.
Yeah.
But that's part of what we can do and part of how it can help us and everybody, you know. A little meditation and cooling out and calming down and that whole thing. And so I'm not pushing him, but I am pushing the idea of not pushing anything. I'm too unstable to push it. I can't even push a wheelbarrow very good anymore.
Oh, leave the manual labor to someone else, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. Anyway, that's a whole other part of the thing. And meditation is an awful lot like hypnosis and a deep prayer. Yeah. I did a seminar one time called the prayer response. Was good.
We should talk about that next week because I was over in Thailand, and I think that one thing that really struck me was walking through the temples and just watching these monks be so deep in prayer. There's something beautiful about it, you know what I mean? And the chants that it's going on, and the beautiful architecture all tying together. It's pretty amazing.
Saffron robes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
Next week.
Next week. Well, cool.
Okay, that's thanks a lot, folks, for being here. And if you have any questions, find somebody that you want to know. You can send them to me at ivan.fraser@gmail.com.
Cool.
And, you know, I may answer them, or I may wonder what you were thinking, but that's good too. So please, if you got some ideas, just shoot them to me. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Bye, everyone.